So Madolche is a fan favorite deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! It's also my favorite deck, and we have been waiting a long time to get Madolche Queen Tiaramisu in the game. We've also been waiting to get the other XYZ monsters so we can do the full combo lines with this deck, and they are absolutely insane. This deck has a ton of power with it, able to compete with all the top decks in the game right now. It does have some consistency issues, especially since the Petting Cessor is limited to 1, but it's an extraordinarily powerful deck, and it can compete with any deck. I took this deck to get top 32 in the most recent Battle Phase tournament. I lost to a Madolche deck in Mirror Match in top 32, bricking both times, unfortunately. He ended up finishing in top 8, so this deck is pretty solid. It got to top 8 on day 1 of its release, so yeah, definitely be on the lookout for Madolches. It's a great deck. I'll get into all of the combos and the main combo line that you're going to do once we get into the deck replays, but for now I'll just go over the deck list. So Petting Cessor is limit 1, so we're forced to only run 1 of that, but your main starter is going to be the Madolche Madolche. So we're running 3 copies of this because obviously it's your best starter, and you really want to open with this in your opening hand and not open your other Madolches in hand. Petting Cessor is fine if you get the 2 of them in hand, you can still combo off just perfectly, but if you get Hoot Cake, Gelato, or your Pudding Cess in hand, you're not going to be able to combo off to your fullest extent, or your fullest potential, I should say. Now, you still can combo off, it won't be quite as good, but you'll still be able to do it. Pudding Cess in particular, you can actually still special summon out of your hand with Petting Cessor, so you can still go into your exact same combo. You're just going to be neg 1 card that you usually would because it's coming from your hand instead of out of your deck. But beyond that, you really want to keep these cards in your deck instead of in your hand, which is why Switcheroo is our skill. It's been buffed recently, so instead of 1500, it's only 1000 life points now, but when your life points go down by 1000, you can shuffle a card from your hands into your deck and draw a new card. Occasionally, you do have that old thing where you draw the same card you shuffled back, but it is a really good skill. We need it nonetheless. I feel like it's much better than the skill that summons a 3000 Labyrinth Wall monster on the board. I'm forgetting its name right now, but I feel like it's much better to run Switcheroo than that skill, especially because we can proc it so easily now with the Cosmic Cyclone, taking away 1000 of our life points. So Switcheroo, great for shuffling these back into our deck. So we have 3 starters in the Madolche and then the 1 Petting Cessor. We also have 1 Summoner Monk which acts as a starter. Again, not as good as Madolche, but it does get us a pretty good field. I did find though that a lot of times when I have Monk or draw Monk in my opening hand, that I would draw it alongside of a Madolche, and so it was just a dead card in hand at that point that I wished it was just another back row. So I might even think about cutting the Monk and just not running any Monk whatsoever, but at the time I just leave it at 1. Most players are running this at 2, so it's just something to be aware of, but I think you can definitely cut it to 1. Beyond that, I think the rest of the Madolche lineup is totally fine. I don't think you need multiple copies of any of these other Madolches. If you want to run hand traps, some people have been running things like White Princess alongside multiple copies of Hoot Cake, because then Hoot Cake can act as a good starter for you. You just have to discard the hand trap, but it's not a great way to open up, I find. I really don't feel like you need to do that. I think you're just totally fine off the 3 Madolche, the 1 Petting Cessor, and then 1 to 2 Summoner Monk. You don't need any other openers besides that. Getting into the rest of the lineup, I have 1 MST to go along with the 3 Cosmic Cyclone. We have a lot of spots for tech cards in our deck, and back row from our opponent can be a big problem, so having a lot of ways to deal with it can really help push through our opponents, because again, Tiaramisu can just take out monsters so easily without triggering so many different things. It doesn't destroy, it doesn't target, so a lot of cards that have protection built in just fall to Tiaramisu. So if you can just clean out their back row, sometimes you can just come in and wipe out the board. Book of Moon can help with that as well, being able to flip down monsters, obviously to help push for the OTKs with Tiaramisu, or as protection if you're going first. We have 1 Chateau in here, great for giving your monsters an attack boost and being able to OTK, but also for, of course, getting your Madolche monsters back into your hand when you activate their effects to shuffle. I decided not to run the Madolche ticket in here. While this is a great card in TCG and in Master Duel, it's just not as good in Duel Links. It's much better to have either Chateau or Knights, or to have an interactive trap card like Compulse or Warning Points or, Book of Moon or something like that instead. So Ticket's a great card, it's better to have Chateau or the searchable Madolche Knights in its place. And out of the 50 or 60 games that I played with this deck yesterday, or earlier today, I never had a single time where Madolche Knights wasn't live. So Madolche Knight's a pretty good card. I also have the 1 of Warning Point and the 2 Compulsory. I chose not to run the Icy Dragon's Prison after a while. Icy Dragon's Prison did go great at first, but sometimes your board is just filled up and you can't use its effect because of that. One Madolche Queen Tiaramisu. It never really came up for me needing the second one. It almost did in one match, but it never actually came up that I needed to have the second Madolche Queen. One Dark Rebellion Dragon. This is mostly for Summoner Monk. Occasionally, you might need to go Monk into, like, Madolche or whatever to go into the Rebellion Dragon. It doesn't really come up much. We have one Chocolate a la Mode. Again, you rarely need the second one. I think it only came up one time that I needed it. Two Glass Souffle. You definitely need two of this. Quite often you're going to be using two of this one. We have one Unicorn, one Phoenix, and then one Link Disciple. This is to help against the Nightmare Ibli card that people summon to your side of the board to try to lock you into just Link summoning. Sometimes you're just not able to go into Phoenix if you open up with like the Petting Cessor in hand, so Link Disciple is a way to deal with that, though you don't really need it, as a lot of times you can just go into Phoenix, as you should see in one of the replays. So go ahead and dig into those right now. Alright, so in this replay, I'm going to show you guys the main Madolche combo that you're going to be doing, and a lot of the other ones are actually going to come off of this combo as well. I'll show you with the Petting Cessor how a lot of your plays are going to come from that exact same combo line. Some of the plays that can get, I guess, monotonous, I guess is the way I had it described to me, where it's like, it's a lot of the same play over and over again, but it's not when you have to play through Disruption at times, though, so you do have to kind of figure things out, or when you don't draw the perfect hand, because if you draw some of those garnets in hand, your play isn't going to be the exact same, so you do have to figure some things out at times, but I'm going to show you the main combo right now that you're going to be doing a lot of times. So again, your best opener is Madolche. You want to open this in hand and keep your other Madolches in the deck. So first things first, normal summon the Madolche, search our deck. We're going to go ahead and search for a Petting Cessor. If you open up with both of these in hand already, you can just search for the second Madolche. Search for the Petting Cessor. Petting Cessor is going to allow itself to special summon it to the field because we don't have any monsters in our graveyard. This is why hand traps don't work with this deck like DD Crow too well, because you can't have any monsters in the grave to be able to special summon the Petting Cessor. So we'll special summon it from our hand, triggering its effect to special summon a Madolche monster from the deck. But that Madolche monster is going to have its level reduced by 1. So we generally want to bring out the Pudding Sis and make it a level 4. If you already have Pudding Sis in hand, you can actually special summon the Pudding Sis from your hand. If Pudding Sis has been removed for some reason, this is usually where you want to bring out your Hoot Cake, because it's a level 3, it'll make it a 2, and it doesn't matter. But remember, your level 4 is going to be turned into level 3 with this, so you can't just XYZ with them. So Pudding Sis is the one you want to bring out. It's also going to let you trigger other effects later on. So you bring out your Pudding Sis, and then you go into the Glass Souffle. And it kind of doesn't really matter too much which one you do it with, as long as you use the Pudding Sis. You have to use the Pudding Sis as a material under this. It doesn't matter if you use as much the Madolche or the Petting Cessor. I kind of like to put the Petting Cessor back in the deck, but it could be wrong. But nonetheless, so you want to make sure, though, that the Pudding Sis is underneath the XYZ monster. So you go for the Glass Souffle, trigger his first effect, trigger her first effect to detach the Petting Cessor from the deck. Do not detach the Pudding Sis from her to activate her effect. So you detach, it doesn't matter who you target, it's going to make them unaffected by your opponent's monster effects at the end of the turn, but we don't care about that here. We just want to put a Madolche monster in the graveyard. Once you put the Madolche monster in the graveyard, you can XYZ summon into the Chocolate a la Mode over the Madolche Glass Souffle just by using that as your material. It's part of the Pudding Sis effect. You can overlay this, and it gives you a beefier monster on the board, as you'll see right here, at 3k attack points, or excuse me, at 2500 attack points. It goes up to 3k with the field spell. So now, just another thing too, when you activate the Glass Souffle effect to detach and put the Petting Cessor in grave, the game is going to ask you, do you want to activate Glass Souffle's second effect? Make sure you say no. Do not activate her second effect to shuffle the card back into the graveyard. You want to XYZ summon first into the Chocolate a la Mode, and then use her effect. So when it says it for the first time, say no. So you're going to summon the Pudding Sis Chocolate a la Mode to the board, activate her effect to shuffle a Madolche monster from your graveyard back into the deck. So once you've done that, it's going to trigger Madolche Pudding Sis Chocolate a la Mode's effect. This time you want to say yes when it asks you if you want to activate the effect. So you're going to detach. Again, make sure you do not detach the Pudding Sis, because you can only get this second effect if Pudding Sis is a material under Chocolate a la Mode. This special summon effect only works if the princess is there. So detach the Glass Souffle, and then you're going to want to special summon the Hoot Cake. Then Hoot Cake effect can activate. You're going to banish the Madolche monster from your graveyard to special summon the Mesh and Gelato from your deck. Gelato's effect is going to activate, searching you a Madolche spell or trap card from your deck. Now, which one you grab, either the Chateau or the Madolche Knights that negates monster effects, depends on the situation. Sometimes you're going to want to search Knights, sometimes you're going to want to search Chateau. As we figure out the deck better, we learn the matchup better, you will get a better idea of like when to search what card at what times, but you know, it just depends. Sometimes I search Chateau, sometimes I search the other, it just depended. In this matchup, he didn't have a ton of back row, but I liked my monster being beefier, being able to swing over the Dante easier, because this was a Burning Abyss matchup, so I went for the Chateau. But either way, this one card Mageline just turned into a Chateau, and look at all these monsters on the field. Now, this is where your lines kind of differ. If you didn't have Mageline in your hand, and instead your opening card was the Petting Cessor, you would have basically the exact same board here, minus the Mageline. So you wouldn't have Mageline on field, you would have this exact same board as it is, though, without that on field. If you open up with Summoner Monk, it's going to be the exact same board again, except instead of this Mageline, it's going to be Summoner Monk there. So if you have either of those two plays where you use the Summoner Monk or the Petting Cessor to go into this board, you're basically going to end right here with the Summoner Monk because you're locked into Madolches because of Petting Cessor. You can't XYZ into something else like Giant Hand or whatever. You can only summon Madolche monsters, and Summoner Monk can't be used to summon any of our Madolche monsters. They all require Madolches only. So but since we do have the Mageline on the board, since we opened up with that, and that's, again, the best, this is why we want to open up with that, we can XYZ summon one more time here to make the Glass Souffle, which acts as another interruption. So I mentioned that Glass Souffle has the effect to detach, and then target a Madolche and make it unaffected by monster effects, except its own. That's great, obviously, for protecting your monsters during your opponent's turn, but also you can then trigger its second effect. Whenever a Madolche is sent to the graveyard, you can choose two cards in either graveyard and shuffle them back into the deck. Any two cards, they don't have to be Madolche. So that means during your opponent's turn, you can detach this, target a Madolche, make it unaffected by monster effects, and then shuffle two cards from your opponent's graveyard back into their deck. You can't do it like immediately as part of a chain because you have to like wait for the effect to resolve and activate her second effect. But you can shuffle two cards from your, so like if you're playing Salad or something like that, you can shuffle their monsters, their Jack Jaguar or whatever, back into their deck and stop them from being able to trigger their plays. It's an extremely powerful piece of interruption against certain decks, so don't overlook Glass Souffle's ability to shuffle your opponent's cards back into the deck. You can also not only shuffle your Madolches, you can also shuffle your Madolches back in the deck, of course, to trigger your Chocolate a la Mode effect, put them back in your hand. You can also even like put your own trap cards back into your deck, so if you're playing a deck and you really want to top deck into more traps, you can do that. So there's all kinds of cool things you can do with Glass Souffle, but nonetheless, this is the end board that you're looking to end on. If you help open up with Mageline and like you get, this is like your full combo that you want to end on with your additional back row or additional cards to set. So this is as best of a hand as we could possibly imagine. We have the Mageline for the follow-up play next turn. Like, you can't ask for any better here, really. So we're playing Burning Abyss here. He has the MST to go after both of our two back rows. So again, the only interruption we have is the Glass Souffle here. He has Seer, which he special summons, normal summons the Skarm, and goes right into the Dante, which is unfortunate that we don't have a way to stop him from getting the mill here, but he's going to go ahead and get it. So we're going to go ahead and activate the Glass Souffle effect. Again, we can't like immediately like target the things and put them back in because like you have to wait for the chain to resolve, but nonetheless, so we're going to do it. We're just going to go ahead and do it here and shuffle our card back in. So this is what I was talking about, doing this on your opponent, or being able to like have like some cool things you can do with the Glass Souffle. So during our opponent's turn, we're going to go ahead and shuffle the Gelato, or detach the Gelato, which triggers the Glass Souffle effect. Glass Souffle shuffles the Madolche Mageline back, or the Madolche Messenger Gelato back into our deck, which triggers the Chocolate Out of Mode effect. Again, when a Madolche monster is shuffled from a graveyard into the deck, it triggers Chocolate a la Mode's effect, allowing you to special summon a Madolche monster from your deck. And since we just shuffled the Gelato back into the deck, we can now summon it from the deck. And since we don't have any other materials under the a la Mode, it's okay to finally go ahead and detach the Pudding Sis now, since it's the last time we're going to be able to use this anyway. So we'll summon the Gelato back from the deck, trigger its effect to be able to go ahead and add the add the Madolche Knights or other Madolche Spell and Trap from our deck to hand. The reason why I went ahead and did that now is because once he mills, if he hits a Farfa or hits a Rhino that can send the Farfa, he's going to be able to detach, or excuse me, send our monster to the banish pile, and we'll eventually get our monster lost to the Farfa effect, but we'll also lose materials, and we wouldn't be able to do this summon anyway. So go ahead and do that. We have the Chateau, so we can get things back to our hand if we need to, like the Hoot Cake, and then like banish and do more effects. So we're doing it. We're in a good spot here. Plus, we, of course, have the Madolche Decklist in our hand for the follow-up play. So we'll go ahead and get the Knights to our hands. He goes straight for the Beatrice play. Beatrice pretty good here. He's just going to swing over the Gelato because he can't even swing over the other things. This has 3,000 attack, this has 3,000 defense, and it's just better, I guess, to kill the Gelato. Although, honestly, probably should have killed the cake. It doesn't really matter, though. So we'll go ahead and put the Messenger Gelato back in the deck. If it's something like Mageline, we'll add it back to hand, but it'll give you the option. Like, it'll ask you with Madolche Chateau, do you want to activate the effect of Chateau and add it to hand or not? And then you can pick and choose. If it's Messenger Gelato, you usually shuffle it back, or if it's any of those three that I talked about earlier, a lot of times you'll shuffle them back, but there's times you won't. So back to our turn. We're just going to go ahead and Book of Moon his monster immediately. So I know it's going to make him like trigger the effect to send something from deck to graveyard. We basically have to worry about a couple things here. So the Beatrice, and then he has a Seer under it, so we have to get rid of the Beatrice so it doesn't trigger its effect to bring back a Dante. And then we got to get rid of the Seer. Like the Seer, it's going to special something back to the field, so there's a couple threats that we need to deal with here. So let's Book of Moon his Beatrice so we get rid of that effect. He sends a Dante to hand. I don't care about him adding anything. We're just worried about the Seer effect under this. So we have 3 monsters on the board. We're just going to go ahead and use the Glass Souffle effect, trigger, summon a Madolche monster to the board with the Hoot Cake. Go ahead and link off our 3 monsters into a Unicorn to ditch, just to get his monster off the field. So again, we can trigger the Seer effect to get him to have 1 final monster on the field. And now we can normal summon Mageline. Doesn't matter what we search for, as long as he doesn't have a hand trap, he's done. We can overlay into our Madolche Queen Tiaramisu and finally shuffle something from his side of the field back into the deck. Another quick note here, you have to have a Madolche card in graveyard to use Tiaramisu's effect. You can't just activate it if you don't have a Madolche card in the graveyard. However, though, just a cool note, Madolche Knights or any of your other Madolche Spell or Trap cards count for that, because it doesn't have to be a monster. So we'll shuffle a couple things back from our graveyard into our deck, shuffle his monster back into his deck, and then we'll swing in for 4,000, finishing this duel. And this actually was a tournament match, actually. Alright, so I've got a few other replays. This one was not a tournament match. The last couple that I have to show you will be tournaments. The ones that I have to show before this will not be, though. This was a ranked play match. Our opponent is running Mech Knights in this one. He's running the Ibli lock here, or the Ibli version of the deck, I guess you would say. I guess he could also be running just 1 or 2 of these and happen to open up with it. Either way, he summons Ibli to our side of the field after going into the Mermaid, puts a blue sky out there so that he can go ahead and get the search off. Nightfall is going to activate, so he has another search, and it's banished for next turn. Plus, he's going to go ahead and be able to make his Morning Star now. So that's going to let him discard a Mech Knight, get his World Legacy secrets, and then he's going to end his turn here with 2 set cards along with Morning Star, and we're under the Ibli lock, not being able to special summon except for Link summons, plus he has Nightfall coming back next turn. So fortunately, though, we have Cyclone that can deal with the World Legacy trap card. So we're going to go ahead and normal summon our Mageline, chain the Cosmic Cyclone to banish the World Legacy secrets. I was also trying to see if we could like bait out like the Book of Moon, see if he had like a Book of Moon for the Mageline here, because we do have the Link Slayer or whatever to get off of the Ibli lock that way too. But he didn't, so we go ahead and get rid of that. We'll search our deck for another Mageline. We'll go ahead and go for the Nightmare Phoenix here. We just want to clean out this back row and get it out of the way so we can try to OTK him. So we'll go ahead and discard a Madolche, get rid of it. It's just an MST, so at this point we pretty much just got game, right? We'll activate the Chateau. We're going to head and special summon the Petting Scissor, and again, you can almost treat this as if like it's a normal like opening turn where you don't have Mageline, you just have Petting Scissor, if you think of it and like trying to learn some of the combos here. So we're going to go ahead and special summon our Pudding Sis from the deck with the Petting Scissor effect. It's going to let us go into the Glass Souffle detach, put the Petting Scissor in the graveyard, go into the Chocolate Owl mode. This is what I mean about this combo being, you know, like very repetitive, and like this one like particular play with the Petting Scissor, bringing out the Pudding Sis, going into the Chocolate Owl mode, or going to Glass Souffle, then going into the Chocolate Owl mode and doing this. But you're going to go ahead and target your Petting Sis, put it into the deck. It's going to trigger the Chocolate Owl mode effect. You're going to bring out the Hoot Cake. is going to be able to banish your monster from the deck to summon, but we're going to activate Switcheroo first. Remember, we took 1,000 life points for activating our Cosmic Cyclone. Now we get to activate our Switcheroo. We can return this Messenger Gelato back to our deck that we didn't want to draw, and draw another card. Here's an Icy Dragon Prison. Remember, I don't remember if I talked about testing this in the early phases, but I decided not to go with it because sometimes our board gets too full, in case I didn't mention that earlier in the video. But go ahead and continue with our play. Banish for the Hoot Cake, special summon the Gelato. Gelato's going to search your deck for another Madolche Spell or Trap card, and at this point, we have more than enough damage to finish him off. We'll use the Pudding Sis to swing over his monster so that we can destroy it through the Mech Knight effect, and after that, we have more than enough damage to win. Alright, so this was against XYZ. This was against Galaxy Eyes. So our opponent has Shuffle Reborn, able to bring back the Photon Dragon from the graveyard. Expedition is going to let him get into the Photon Lord. So Photon Lord can actually be a little bit difficult for this deck to deal with. Book of Moon is great for flipping it face down, sure, but at that point it's at 3,000 attack points, so you basically have to use like tiaramisu or something like that to kill it. Beyond that, so fortunately he has no back row here, which is good because we didn't open up with any like MST or Cosmic or anything, so we'll go ahead and Book of Moon. I don't care if he searches his deck. This is going to be an easy win here, and this is going to be a good example too of what I'm talking about, like having to sort of like you know, adapt your plays based on what your hand is. So summon the Madolche, search your deck for the Petting Cess, special summon it, bring out the Pudding Sis from the deck, overlaying the Glass Souffle. It's the play that we saw earlier. It's gonna be the exact same up until the point that we summon a monster from our deck. Now, at this point, we don't have Hoot Cake in deck, but it's fine because we have a Madolche monster in grave. This is sort of the other point. I should have mentioned this earlier. This is the other point that we have to worry about, our point of divergence with Madolches. If you're going second and you have like a monster to remove here, at this point, when you trigger the Pudding Sis Chocodile Mode effect and shuffle the Petting Cess into the deck, trigger this, you can bring out another like a level 4, go into the Madolche tiaramisu here and shuffle his monster back into his deck. So that is like another way to be able to trigger the effect, because you're going to get a monster in grave with Pudding Sis effect. So you'll go ahead and see that here, I believe. Shuffle this back in the deck. It triggers the Petting Cess effect. Bring out another level 4. We go into the tiaramisu, and we have the monster in the graveyard for tiaramisu effect. Shuffle it back in. Shuffle his monster into the deck. Activate the Chateau to get the extra damage in here, and then we can swing in for game. Actually, we're going to trigger Chocodile Mode's effect. Chocodile Mode is not a once per turn effect, by the way, so if you have Chateau in hand, you can do that. You can actually trigger her effect again on the same turn. It's pretty ridiculous, the combos you can do with this deck. Alright, so we're going first, but we have the Messenger Gelato in hand, which is unfortunate because we can't get the full combo, but we have the Madolche in hand, which is more important. As long as you have Madolche in hand, you can do this main combo with it, where you add the Petting Cess, Princess, all this stuff, just like we've seen numerous times over. Go in the Glass Souffle, detach, you're going to go ahead and go into the Chocodile mode. Make sure you say no to the first time it asks you. Shuffle the Petting Cess back into the deck, trigger its effect, going to go into the Hoot Cake, detach, summon, and banish and summon. But since we have Gelato in hand, we're just going to go for another Madolche and then overlay in the Glass Souffle and set her to back row. Again, unfortunate, but it does happen with this deck. Again, that's why Switcheroo along with Cosmic Cyclone is just so powerful. So our opponent has an MST to take care of one of our back row. We'll go ahead and just Book of Moon our monster so we don't take damage. Doesn't really matter too much. The MST is our other back row. So now it's Goki, and we get really, really lucky here. He has the Suprex in hand, so that's great for him, but his second monster is a Headbat, which means he can't add Headbat to hand and then use its effect to special summon itself to the board and then, you know, trigger a search. I mean, he can summon it to the field, but then he can't get the additional search off of it. So like our opponent can't get the normal play here where they like add the Goki Headbat to hand, go into the Link 3, and then search, and then normal summon, and then go into the Link 4, and then, you know, Goki Headbutt, 2 monsters to the board. He has to add the Goki Headbutt, or excuse me, the Headbutt, the Goki return, the Goki monster return card to hand. He has to add that to his hand now at this point in time, and then go into the Link 3 monster. So he has to do the rematch first here, and as a result, I'm going to activate the Glass Souffle effect to detach and shuffle one of his 2 Gokis back in the deck. Since he only has 1 Goki in grave, he can't activate the Monster Reborn Goki card to rematch now, and we're going to trigger the effect of the Chocodile mode since a Madolche will shuffle from our deck into the graveyard. So we're going to be able to bring out another Madolche to the board just to bring out an additional threat, an additional monster to go into a rank 4 with. And at that point, he's done, because we know his 2 cards in hand are a Goki Scorpion that he can't summon, a Goki Monster Reborn spell card, double Monster Reborn, that he can't use, and whatever his 3rd and final card is, which we have enough to be able to play through. We can just like go into Phoenix, pop it, and then go into our tiaramisu, shuffle back in. And his last card is Goki Finishing Mood, so it doesn't matter. We're going to be able to win the game here easily. He knows that, which is why he goes ahead and scoops, and we win the game. Alright, now this one was a tournament game, and I think the rest of them from this point on should all have been tournament games. So we were playing Trickstar, actually, in this event. He went first, put out the Holly Angel, summoned a Candina, went for the Lycaris? I don't even know how you pronounce the name. Anyways, he's going to give himself the skill, use the skill to give himself the extra 2,000 life points. He's up to 6k at this point, and he has 2 back rows set. We have the Petting Cessor, but no Mageline in our opening hand. That's okay. We'll activate the Chateau to give at least some kind of protection to the Petting Cessor. He's go ahead and trigger some effect. Burn, I don't care about that. Summon the Petting Cessor. It's going to get bottomless now since it's over 1,500 life points because of the Chateau. So Chateau actually hurting us a little bit at this point, but it's okay. Petting Cessor's effect is going to go ahead and activate. We're going to special summon the Pudding Sis. Now, Pudding Sis has a couple of other effects to it. It's not just a monster that you use as material to go into your biggest monsters. It has 2 other effects. One, if you have no monsters in grave, it gains 800 attack points, and when you have Chateau next to it, it's at a pretty formidable 2,300 attack points. But also, anytime it battles, at the end of damage calculation, you get to destroy a card on your opponent's side of the board. So even just summoning Pudding Sis and swinging into things is not terrible. Also, your Madolche Knights has a second effect. If you negate a monster's effect with Madolche's Knight on the board, you actually shuffle a random card from your opponent's hand back into the deck. So Pudding Sis has a couple of really cool tricks behind her as well. So we'll go ahead and set all of our back row cards. We'll swing into his monster to destroy it. He's going to use the spell card in the graveyard to protect it, but again, Pudding Sis' second effect activates, popping his monster. He's going to go ahead and summon his second monster and return his Candina to hand so he can summon it again and search. Going to go ahead and try to do it now, but we have the warning point to shut it down. This is big because not only does he not get the search off, but obviously he can't link summon at this point now, so he's just going to set another back row and pass. Summon, we unfortunately top deck a Hootcake, and all we can do is summon and swing, and he has a Needle Ceiling, but this actually hurts him worse than it hurts me, right? Because we're both losing 2 monsters, but he's losing the Needle Ceiling, so he's going -1 on that. But also, we're going to be able to shuffle our Pudding Sis back into the deck and add our Hootcake back to hand because of Chateau. So Chateau, add our Hootcake back to hand, Pudding Sis back into the deck. That Needle Ceiling actually works out big for us. He had to do it, but it works out huge for us. So he's going to summon the Coralbane. We're just going to go ahead and book a Moon It. I guess I could have waited to let him like go in and do some damage so I could trigger my skill and shuffle my Hootcake or something back into the deck, but at this point I figure I can just book his monster and swing over it. He has a Book of Moon of his own, but it's fine. We're up in card advantage at this point. We can just set the compulsory. He's going to activate his spell card to be able to summon another Trickstar Link monster to the board. He's going to swing over my Hootcake, but again, Chateau's going to let us re-add it back to hand. If you get into these sort of top-decking wars with Chateau on the board, it can actually just save you by constantly letting you re-add Madolche monsters back to your hand over and over again. So we'll go ahead and compulse his other monster, bounce it back again. Could have taken a damage to activate Switcheroo, but it's fine. So we top deck a Mageline on the next turn. I could have summoned Mageline and search, but I wanted to just clear out his field. Just get rid of his last monster over there, clear out the Coralbane. We have the Madolche Knights, so we'll just summon the Hootcake. It goes up to 2k because of the Chateau. We'll swing into it, trigger, re-add the Hootcake to hand. Again, could have, well, we don't have the full combo in hand because Petting Cessor are banned at this point, so that's fine. Go ahead and let him go. He just has another back row card. I guess I could have MST'd the back row at this point. I probably should have MST'd the back row. I guess I was kind of thinking that if I'm not even sure what I was thinking at that point. I probably should have just gone ahead and MST'd. I guess I was worried about his own back row card, but just go ahead and MST'd it. He is at 5,800, so it's not like we can kill him this turn anyways, but we'll just go ahead and summon the Mageline. I guess if he top decks his own MST, he might hit ours, so I guess that's probably what along the lines I was thinking, but we're going to top deck war at this point. So hit him for 19. He summons a Trickstar. It's the Candina. We'll Madolche Knights it so it doesn't get the search off, and we're bigger than it at 1900 because of the Madolche Chateau. During the end phase here, I decided to go ahead and MSC his back row, so we just clean it out. He has nothing left. So at this point, we have really good, just big advantage on him. We can go into the tiaramisu here, overlay, detach, return our card to hand, shuffle his card back into the deck, swing here for 2,700, and we still have a Madolche card in the graveyard, so if necessary, we can do it again next turn. He has nothing left, so we win that duel. Okay, so as I said, this is another tournament match, so we go ahead and summon the Madolche here. We have our combo in hand. Unfortunately, the Hoot Cake's there, so it's not going to be the full combo like we did before, but we'll still be able to go into the Glass Souffle here, detach, go into the Chocolate Aloe mode, trigger its effect, shuffle the petting sets back into the deck. Again, it's the same combo. You've seen it over and over again. Going to bring out another Madolche this time, end up with another Glass Souffle on the board. Again, we don't have the Hoot Cake in hand. Set our 2 back row and pass. He's going to be activating Salamangreat Circle, so it's a Salamangreat deck. So at this point, I'm thinking go ahead and just Warning Point the first thing that he summons. It's the Foxy that triggers an effect when normal summon, so that's perfect. We negate the effect so he doesn't get the activation, and he can't Link Summon with it. That's the end of his turn right there. He sets 3 back row and pass. Gotta be worried about the Needle Ceiling at this point, right? So we just go straight into attack mode and swing. I'm just trying to avoid the Needle Ceiling at all costs. I have the double Book of Moon to try to play around it, so we'll go ahead and do that. Swing, swing, deal a ton of damage. Now we actually are going to go for the OTK here, right? Remember us doing this on his turn earlier. We're going to activate the Glass Souffle, detach 1. That's going to trigger its effect to shuffle things back into our deck. So we're going to shuffle our Madolche monster back into our deck, as well as the Salamangreat Foxy, so that he can't use it on the following turn. That's going to trigger our Chocolate Aloe mode effect, since something was shuffled from our deck back into the something from our graveyard into the deck. So we're going to try to special summon another Madolche monster and swing for game. Unfortunately, he has a Salamangreat Circle, so it's going to force. So he's going to search his deck for Salamangreat Mirror and special summoning it. Guess what? There's 4 monsters on the board. Needle Ceiling comes in and wipes out everything. Which is really frustrating, but still, we made him go through a lot of resources to do that, and we still have 2 Book of Moon set, and we have the Hoot Cake in graveyard with monsters engraved to activate its effect. Excuse me, Hoot Cake in hand with monsters engraved for its effect. So he goes ahead and summons Lady Debug. I'm just going to go ahead and Book of Moon immediately so that he can't go into the Link Summon with it. Draw for turn, MST his back row as we rip it off the top, summon the Hoot Cake. As I mentioned, we have plenty of monsters in grave. We'll get the Madolche. Madolche is going to let us add Chateau to hand. He has no hand traps in his deck, so as soon as we clean his monster, we can just swing in for game, activate the Chateau, shuffle everything back, and now we just swing over his monster, swing in for game, easy win there. Awesome. Well, awesome, and that's the last replay that we have here. So if you guys liked the video, please be sure to like and subscribe. It helps the channel. I hope this video helped you guys out with playing Madolches. Again, I love this deck so much. Favorite deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm so happy we have it. It's truly awesome. Some consistency issues, but man, this deck has some real power behind it. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Y'all have a great rest of the day.